What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So it has been maintenance time around here lately, so today we're going to be doing the front brakes on our 2012 Chevy Silverado 1500. This one is a four-wheel drive with the 5.3. So let's get some stuff moved around here, get through the intro, and jump right into today's video. So now that we've gotten through the intro, let's take a look at the parts we're going to be using today. Now keep in mind, this truck is not a performance truck and we never tow with it. If we're going to tow, we use my dually. So this thing is pretty much on strictly daily driver duty with a little bit of stuff in the bed occasionally. So I decided to go with the PowerStop Z17 ceramic pads. I'll link these in the description below. But I've been using PowerStop for a few years now and I've been really happy with it. They've worked out perfectly fine for us in the past. So I think they'll be perfect for this truck. Now I didn't pick up rotors because I don't think it's going to need them. I think we should be able to just pad slap this thing, but if we get in there and it does need them, we will go pick a set up. So first thing we need to do is get this thing jacked up so we can pull the wheels off. So let's get to work. So the first thing we need to do is get this thing jacked up in the air so we can pull the front wheels off it. Now I always recommend using a jack stand because jacks can fail, so put something under there even if you're not going to be underneath the truck. And also, if you're working on a blacktop surface like we are with all the chips in it like this, that's very rough, or if you're working on dirt, keep a close eye on that jack pad because the jack a lot of times will not roll how it should on this type of surface and it can come right off that pad and come crashing down. So just keep an eye on that and be safe whenever you're going to jack up a vehicle. So let's get set up here and we'll get this thing lifted up in the air. Now that we've got this thing up in the air, we can go ahead and start pulling the wheels off. So first thing we need is a flathead to get the cover out of our way. Set this on the side. And then we're going to need a 22 mil socket to pop off the 6 lug nuts. Now we can set those aside and we can go ahead and pop this wheel off. Sometimes you might have to kick it or use a rubber mallet to beat on it a little bit to free it up because it is an aluminum wheel. But in our case, we got lucky. These ones just popped right off. Set this to the side. Now that we're in here, we're taking a look at everything. I do see some rust on this brake line. We don't have one, we can't get one right this second, so I'm gonna hope it doesn't leak right now. And if we have to, we will come back and just replace that later. But the pad life actually looks good, so I don't know if maybe it's just cheap pads on here because they're making a hell of a racket. So we're gonna go ahead and change them anyways. We have the parts to do it, so we're gonna go ahead and slap pads on it. But before I go breaking the caliper loose, I always like to use a flathead or a little pry bar and try to pull the caliper back a little bit just to make sure it's going to go in for us. Just like that. And it'll also make it a little bit easier to get off of there. And this caliper seems to be going back just fine. We're not going to go too crazy pushing this caliper back. It does seem to be moving freely, but we have a special tool that will go in there and we'll push the pistons in. If you don't have the special tool, you can use this screwdriver to get those pistons the majority of the way in because we're going to need them in to put the new pads on. Or you can also use a C-clamp once we get this thing off. But now that we've got that done, let's grab a ratchet and a 19mm socket and we're going to pop off the caliper to mounting bracket bolts. Now that we've got the caliper pushed back a little bit, we can go ahead and grab a 19mm socket and a ratchet, and we're also going to need a thin 19mm wrench. So we'll go ahead and pop that on here, the ratchet on here, and break that free. We'll do the same thing down at the bottom here. All right. Now before we pop those bolts all the way out, I like to set ourselves up with a zip tie up here around the spring or anywhere that's not going to move on us so that we can hang the caliper once we break it free so that it's not hanging by the hose or just chilling somewhere that it could get knocked off. So now that we got that set up, let's pop these bolts out. Now that we've got the caliper hanging out of our way, we can grab an 18mm socket and take the caliper mounting bracket bolts out. You can pad slap it right here like it sits. These pads will come right out of here, and if you're not doing the rotor, you can easily slap pads in it just like this. But I like to always clean up the bracket. So we're gonna take this all apart. We have new hardware, we'll clean this up. And I'm also gonna take a look at the rotor and see if we need a new one or if I wanna just clean this one up a little bit. So let's grab our 18mm socket and get these bolts out. So to get the rotor off, you're gonna need a T30 Torx. We're gonna try it with just a ratchet and we're gonna hit it with our hand, because a lot of times I'll use an impact gun turned way down, or the one that you hit with a hammer. But this one looks pretty good, so we're gonna try it. And it actually did seem to break free. So we'll pop that out of there. Wow, even the rotor's coming right off. I thought we were gonna have to beat it with a hammer. All right, we'll set this aside for a minute and start cleaning up our brackets and take a look at this rotor. So we've got this thing all apart, and like I said at the beginning, we were gonna just pad slap it, but I don't like the way this rotor looks. It's got heat marks all throughout it, but the biggest thing that worries me is this lip right here. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up on the pad, but you can see a step right where that groove would be. I don't know why it did that. I don't know why this got rusty, and then the pad just didn't keep that surface clean like it did everywhere else. But if I put new pads on this, I'm afraid it's gonna catch that and you're gonna feel like a pulsing in your pedal almost. So I don't wanna destroy the new pads we got for it. So we're gonna go ahead and pick up some local rotors for this thing, and I'll show you guys the part number when we get back. So we just got back to AutoZone. I'll link these in the description as well, but they're both the same part number. So we ended up grabbing these. So we'll get these things opened up, get the caliper mounting bracket opened up, and start putting this thing together. So we've got one pad off. I'm gonna go ahead and pop the other one out. Now I'm going to pop the hardware off. These ones actually look really good. This whole caliper mounting bracket, it actually looks really clean, really good. Not that old. The slide pins feel fine. We'll still clean them up and grease them, but they seem pretty good. So I'm just going to use a wire brush that we have right here, scuff them up, get them cleaned up, and then we'll get everything reassembled. Alright, I'm going to blow these off with some compressed air quick, and then we'll start reassembling them. So these slides actually feel fine, but I always like to take them apart, clean them up, and grease them. So we're going to do it anyways. So this one came with two different style hardwares. We've got this one, and then we've got this one. This is the style that was on it, so that's what we're gonna put back on it. They're super simple, they literally just clip on. But I do kind of like how it keeps that pad contained. That's gonna make it easier for assembly. The pad can't fall out on you. That one, put the other one on. I'm gonna take a little bit of our high temp brake caliper grease and put it on where the pad is gonna ride. You don't need to go super crazy, just a light little film. Now we can start putting our pads in. So we've got our inner, which has the little noisemaker or wear indicator. That's gonna go on the inside. I like this hardware because when you pop it in, the pad's in there and now it can't come back out. I actually really like that design. Now we can grab our new outer pad and do the same thing. Clipped by that little stopper. And now those things are in there. So now that we've got the mounting bracket and pads ready to go on the truck, we can clean up our rotor and then head back over to the caliper and get that prepped to go on. We've got our rotor out, and I'm gonna use some brake clean and just get the oil off of these that they put on there so they don't rust when they're sitting on the shelf. All right, our new rotor is ready to go on, so let's go get the caliper ready. So I mentioned a caliper tool earlier. It's this right here. It's just got these two pads on it, and as you ratchet the handle, it spreads them so that it pushes the caliper or the caliper pistons back in, and it actually works really good. You can use a C-clip or something like that, but this does tend to work really nice and easy, and it makes the job just a lot easier all the way around. But I've done it many times with a C-clip as well, or C-clamp. But like you can see, as you ratchet it, it just slowly pushes those pistons right back. Equally. And this caliper did go back super nice and easy, so that's a good sign. Get this tool out of here. Now we can go ahead, slap our rotor on, and then start putting our pads and caliper back together. Now that we're ready to reassemble everything, I'm gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on the face of this hub here. The rotor did come off pretty easily, but I've had some that I've fought pretty bad before, so I'm just gonna throw some on here as a preventative measure for the future. And we're gonna put a little bit on the screw that we took off. I usually don't use these, but it does make it easier for reassembly. So put a dab on there so that it comes off in the future. Gonna line that screw up just like so. Now that we are ready to reassemble our caliper mounting bracket bolts, I went ahead and cleaned them off real quick. And GM recommends using red Loctite, but I'm gonna use blue. You guys can use whatever you prefer. Now we can grab our caliper and our pads. Get those in place. Grab one of our bolts and get it started. Now the recommended torque that I was able to find for these is 148 foot-pounds. I recommend torquing them on yours, but for ours, we're just gonna use my torque wrench. And then I'll check them by hand. And now the mounting bracket is on. So now we can get ready to put our caliper on. Now that our pad and mounting brackets are on, I'm gonna go ahead and put some of this brake quiet onto the caliper itself. You guys don't have to use this, but I've used it a lot and it has definitely helped cut down on any squeaks or weird noises coming from the brakes. So what I do with it is I just put some on each of the pad surfaces here where the pad is going to meet the caliper, and on the face of each piston of the caliper. And this stuff will kind of dry to like a rubber like substance once it's on and everything. Now that we've got that on, we can go ahead and start putting our caliper back on. Now just always make sure you don't twist up your brake hose when you go to assemble this thing. Now that we got that paste on and everything, you can squeeze your pads and slide your caliper into place. You might have to push in on the slide pins a little bit. Ours went right on nice and easy, but I put a little bit of blue thread locker on the bolts for the caliper to mounting bracket as well, just to be safe here. I didn't go crazy, but again, I think they recommend some red Loctite, so do whatever you would prefer. Grab our bottom bolt. I believe the torque spec for the caliper to mounting bracket bolts or the caliper to slide pin bolts are 74 foot-pounds. Again, we're just going to use my arm torque wrench. Click. Click on that one as well. And now this side is good to go. So we'll get our zip ties out of here. Get everything out of the way. We can throw this tire on and then start on the other side. So we got this side all done and back together. Now we can head on over to the other side and get this one, pull the wheel off, rinse and repeat, do the same exact thing. So let's pull this wheel and get this one done. Just got done putting this side all back together, so now we can go ahead and throw the wheel on, get the wheels torqued, and go take this thing for a ride.
You know what I mean?
The lug nut torque spec for this thing is 140 foot-pounds. If you're not sure, just use a torque wrench, but we're gonna go until my impact gun here clicks. We can throw these little caps back on and go take this thing for a ride. We got the wheels on it and got it back on the ground. So now we're gonna fire it up and go take this thing for a test drive, and we will break in the new pads and rotors. There is a sequence in which you should break in the pads. It depends on what material they are. I will tell you guys about it here in a second when we take this thing for a ride. So we're in the truck, and since we pushed our calipers back, before you put this thing in gear, make sure you pump up the pedal. So just give them like half pumps until they come up, and then once you feel that they're firm, you can go ahead and put it in gear. And we always check our brakes right here in the driveway before we hit the road. Yep, we've got brakes, so we'll take this thing down the road, go ahead and take it for a ride, and we will break these things in. So for the Z17s, the ones that we put on this truck, they want you to do 30 stops from 30 miles an hour down to 5 miles an hour with 30 seconds in between. I've always ran the Z23 and their other line, so we've done different braking procedures depending on what the pad material is. In our case, we're gonna do a few the way they recommend, and then I do a few a little bit more aggressive. But you definitely want to beat in the brakes so that they get a nice film on the rotor itself and seat in properly to help prevent any performance issues or any noises, anything like that, and also help prolong their life as long as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and do one here. That was one. They definitely felt better than what was on here already. And you will notice as you do the break-in, you will feel them, they'll get stronger and stronger, more biting power as you break them in. Do another one right here. Now when you get these things warm, because you do want to get them warm, you don't want to come to a full stop with your foot just holding on the brake, especially if you've just been doing the stop and go to break them in. So leave yourself room at a light or at a stop sign so you can creep forward a little bit so they don't just sit right on the new hot rotor. Now, like I said, you can follow their break-in procedure if you'd like, or what I do is I just do a couple stops. You don't have to slow that far down. Sometimes it's hard with traffic. So the whole purpose of it is just you want to get them warm and you want to get them to seat. We've done quite a few different break-in stops and they're feeling really good, no noises, anything like that. I'm really happy with them. So let's go ahead, turn around, and we'll head back to the house. So we just got back from taking this thing for a ride. We drove it all over the place, got the brake pads nice and bedded in, and it stops perfectly. Like I said before, I've been super happy with all of the Power Stop brake parts that I've used. We've got their drilled and slotted rotors with carbon ceramic pads on the ProCharge GTO. We've got a set of their pads on the Turbo Civic build, and now a set on here, as well as many other vehicles I've done them on that you guys haven't seen on the channel. So all in all, super happy with it. No noises, anything like that, and this thing stops much better than it did. So super happy with how all of that turned out. Hopefully today's video could help you guys out in some way, shape, or form. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms: Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.